We are excited to release this episode with Derek Pando from Relay. David, what was one of your favorite takeaways from this episode?
I never knew how much a lawn mowing business at 15 could influence your career. I thought it was fantastic, his take on just his drive and his commitment. And I think it's a great company. And I love what they're doing, especially with the translations.
I agree. And that hospitality report they came out with for the first year, man, some really great insights. I'm excited to see how this report not only grows next year, but down the road as well. Some really valuable information from this. So enjoy the episode.
Enjoy. Welcome to the Modern Hotelier, the most engaged hospitality podcast. I'm your host, David Millili.
I'm your co-host, Steve Carran.
Steve, who do we have on the program today?
Yeah, David. Today we have on Derek Pando. Derek is an entrepreneurial marketer with over 10 years experience in product marketing, leadership, and international strategy. Derek is the director of product marketing at Relay and was brought on to build out the product marketing and content marketing function across all of Relay's products during this hyper growth phase. Welcome to the show, Derek. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and great for the chance to get to know you guys better. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right, great. So we're going to go through a couple areas. We're going to go through a lightning round. We're going to get to know you from your background, your career, and then we're going to jump into some industry topics. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. What was your first job?
I had a lawn mowing business from like 14 to when I went to college. So mowing people's lawns in the heat of the Texas heat.
What's something you wish you were better at?
Oh, man. I wish I was more handy around the house. Right. We became a homeowner in the last 4 years, and I'm always like, man, I wish I knew how to do this instead of paying someone else out the nose for it.
Right, that's funny. What's a luxury you can't live without?
Oh, a luxury I can't live without. Oh, that's a good one. I really like, oh man. You stumped me this early. Wow. Luxury I can't live without. I think just like a really comfortable comforter on a bed is something I can definitely say is that for me.
Okay, cool. What's a place you've never been to that you'd most like to go?
Right now I've been thinking a lot about Alaska.
Nice.
That's great. What's a superpower you wish you had?
Superpower I wish I had? Flying, hands down.
Okay, cool. So if you had your own late night talk show, who would you choose to be your first guest?
My first guest?
Yeah.
I'd probably choose a comedian I like Nick Bargatze.
Nice.
Or Nate Bargatze. Yeah.
All right, cool.
We knew what you meant.
Right.
We knew what you meant.
You know where I was going with that, yeah.
This is the last one of this round. If you had a time machine, are you going to the future or are you going to the past? And if so, what year are you going to?
Oh, I think I would love to see like the untouched, unspoiled American West. Wow. I don't know how far I'd have to go back, and I wouldn't want to stay there because that sounds like a savage place. But I'd love to see, those parts of the country before it, was developed and modernized.
All right, cool.
That's a great answer. Great answer. Well, that was great. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about you, what makes you tick. So like you said, you grew up in Texas. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
How did that shape you into who you are today?
Well, it's funny you asked about my first job because I think that lawn business really has probably had an outsized impact on my professional career because I learned, selling and customer service and doing a good job and how to work when you don't feel like working and all those good things. So I feel like my, ability to like take something from zero to start was really nurtured when I learned how to take my little lawn mowing business from something my dad wanted me to do to something that could help pay for college.
Love that.
That's great. And so you majored in political science, and then you got your master's in marketing at BYU, then your master's in public administration from Harvard Kennedy. Give us some insight how you chose those schools, how you chose those majors.
Yeah, I have a very expensive interest, and that is lots of education. I tell my wife, like, I don't golf, like, you're good, like, that's not going to take a lot of time or money, but I have this expensive interest, which is grad school and education. But I think it came from like a just always a belief that education is a wonderful thing, and I've always enjoyed it. And I have varied interests, as you can tell. I studied political science, and then did an MBA and was marketing focused, and then later went back to study public service. But a lot of that has just come down to, I've wanted to find different opportunities to learn and nurture different interests at different stages of my career, and education has been one way that I've tried to do that.
I love that. So you mentioned your lawn mowing business. Is you're big on the entrepreneurial side of things. Is that kind of where you got bit by the entrepreneurial bug, or was it something before that where that kind of bit you?
No, it was absolutely the lawn business, because I looked around, and at like 15, I was making 3 times as much money as all my friends in half the time, and I could set my own schedule. And I started hiring my friends, and I just thought, wow, this is nice. Like for me, like that was a much more attractive option than the other things that were available to me. And also just gave me confidence, to like interact with people directly, and how to, when something goes wrong, what to do. I had a case where I was weed whacking, and it picked up a rock and it shattered the back of a window of the car of one of my clients. And I had to think, what am I going to do? So I was like, I'm just going to tell him and then offer to pay for it. So I knock on his door and I say, hey, I shattered your window, and if you get it fixed, let me know how much it is, and I'll write you a check. And the guy had his jaw dropped. At first, I thought it was because I shattered his window, but later I think it was because a 15-year-old was offering to write him a check for however much it costs for something he broke. And that was something I learned through lots of experiences like that mowing lawns.
Very cool.
Great.
And I have one more question here, and this is actually off script a little bit, but when I was doing my research about you, you seem to have a passion for the International Rescue Committee. And I just wanted to kind of see where that came from, and kind of how you got involved with them.
Wow, man, Steve, you do your homework. I'm impressed. Well, so my father was born in Cuba, and he came to the U.S. in the 60s, essentially fleeing communism. And so I think that experience and that family experience has always made me have a more, a clearer view of people in those challenging situations. Mm-hmm. And then also like a downstream view of what your life can be like when people make sacrifices and are able to kind of adapt in new countries where there's greater, opportunities and greater freedoms and things like that. And so that's a big reason why, that's been my charity of choice the last few years. I've done fundraisers for it around my birthday and things like that. And then I also think, if we read what's happening in the news, there's always something going on that's displacing a lot of people that has nothing to do with decisions that they've made or wanted to, be displaced. And so that's why it's something near and dear to my heart.
That's great. Love that. Love to hear that. So now that we've learned a little bit more about you, we're gonna get to how you got to where you are today. So your first few jobs were in kind of these larger tech companies, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Zoom. What did you learn from these larger tech companies that helps you in your current role today at Relay?
Well, I'll say when I joined Zoom, it was not large. It was actually not that much bigger than Relay. It was about 100 million in revenue, 500 employees. But yeah, I think, I think in every company you work for, you learn of like really good things and maybe some things that you would not do going forward. But I think in both those earlier companies you mentioned, what I learned is like solving real pain, having deep customer care, interest, and obsession. And I tried to take those things as I've started to work on kind of earlier and earlier stage companies. And that's what I've looked for. I've looked for companies that are focused on creating value, and that really are, obsessed with listening to their customers, adapting and improving based on their customers' feedback. And that's a lot of what eventually led me to Relay.
And so you were the founder and CEO and now advise Belo. Can you tell how this idea came about and the story behind that company?
Sure. So yeah, a couple years ago, actually during the pandemic, my kids kept coming up to me and asking me to print stuff off. And I thought, oh, that's such a great thing that they want to, instead of asking me to play, video games or watch TV, they were asking me to do something that I saw as a parent that was what I want them to spend more time doing. And so Bilu was a little startup that I launched that nurtured that and made it easier for parents and used different software and AI to make it easier to have hundreds of variations of crossword puzzles and coloring pages and things like that. So that was what I was doing directly before I joined Relay about a year ago.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. And now you are the director of product marketing at Relay. Can you tell us a little bit more what you're responsible for in that role? And for those that might not be familiar, a little bit more about what Relay does.
Sure. Yeah. So Relay, we are a next generation communication device, most commonly, replacing radios for two-way communication. But instead of a big bulky radio, it operates a lot more like your smartphone with location, GPS tracking, and software-based controls, and you can create hundreds of channels, and a lot of the things that have really kind of plagued modern radios, especially in the hospitality industry, have been areas that we've been improving and with our apps and also our devices. But your question about my specific role, I got brought in to kind of as we've been growing, you kind of hit a stage where it's like, hey, we need someone that really thinks about our customers and can create different materials, a lot of it marketing wise, that adds value beyond just like, hey, we have a product and it's awesome. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the hospitality report, but that was one of our first major pieces of content that we invested in that was really like, hey, we want to contribute to the discussion that's happening in the industry. And we want to be a part of it. Of course, we want everyone to know who Relay is. But with our viewpoint of with having so many customers in the hospitality industry and so much unique data, we want to start sharing more of that information with the world and with the industry, and hopefully contribute and help make the industry more informed and overall. So that's really a lot of what my mandate is to do research and create content that supports our customers with communication challenges, but also with many other kinds of challenges that they may have.
Great. And is there anything coming up, new products that excite you that you can share that you're excited about that are going to be rolling out this year or even next year?
Absolutely. Just a couple of days ago, we announced Relay X, which is our next generation of hardware devices. Now, it is designed specifically for like really tough environments where it's going to get beaten up and it's going to get wet and it's extremely loud. And so there are some environments within the hospitality industry where that's the case, like engineering teams, sometimes security teams. They are just super tough on the devices they use. And so this was born from what we've heard from customers across the many segments that we serve, and we're really excited about it. Hardware takes a long time and is tough. And so anytime you're a company that announces a new hardware device, it's a really big moment. So we've been excited to share it with everyone.
How many different products do you all have now? Do you have 3, 4? Do you have?
Yeah, well, I would say like from like a core product perspective, this is really our second. We have the Relay Plus devices, which are used to communicate, and also the 2-in-1 panic button. And then what we just announced, the Relay X, is kind of another kind of physical device. Now, within kind of the ecosystem, we have apps that work with it, and we have other kind of infrastructure pieces like Bluetooth beacons that help you have indoor location tracking and things like that. But I'd say that those are kind of considered our two main product lines at the moment. Yeah,
sure. And you have the real-time translation too, don't you?
We do. Yes. Yeah. That was the other one I was maybe going to mention. But yeah, we earlier this year we launched real-time translation within all of our devices and application, which has been really exciting.
Yeah, it was funny because we talked about this at High Tech, and I was laughing, and I was going to say, "Could I borrow these? Because I'm going to my wife's mother's 70th birthday in Dominican Republic." So I was the one. I was the one gringo, and everybody was a lot of the people that were there were local and didn't speak. They spoke English, but I was like, wow, if I had that thing, that'd be really cool if I could just like sync up with people. But anyway, that was a funny thing I was thinking about during that trip.
Oh no, that's a use case we have not explored yet from the guest bringing it, but no, it's very common though that in hotel setting that they will use it to communicate with guests when there is a language barrier, as well as within teams where there are kind of ongoing language challenges.
Great solution. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, another case study might be for families with David.
All right, we got to think about that.
Today's episode is brought to you by Relay. Relay is a cloud-based technology platform that helps hospitality teams streamline communications, increase employee safety, and improve productivity and response time, all while enhancing guest experience. It combines two-way communications with language translation and a panic button to help hospitality teams transform their operations. Relay's lightweight, easy-to-use devices leverage multiple cellular networks and Wi-Fi to provide nationwide connectivity and reduce dead spots, track performance and the real-time locations of staff and equipment down to the room without the need for expensive infrastructure upgrades. Can your radio do that? Visit relaypro.com for more information.
This is where I'm really excited. I'm excited to dive into a little bit more how Relay is affecting the hospitality industry. So you guys, like you mentioned earlier, just released your first ever hospitality report. What were some of the trends that you saw in that report that are emerging?
Yeah, so we were really excited. Like I said, this was part of what I was brought on to do. And I think Relay has just also gotten to a unique point where we have visibility into customers and kind of the aggregated anonymized data that is really unique to us. And like we can pull out some insights that really nobody else is able to pull. Now, we had a qualitative survey, but then we also did, data analysis. So it's a mix. But I think what surprised me the most is that, when we surveyed and we asked about all sorts of things and different technologies people are investing in, but when we asked like what is going to impact the industry the most or what trend, it came down to personalized guest experiences. And I kind of looked at the data and I'm in the tech world, so like this is what we focus on. But as I've talked with other hoteliers around the country about it, I think it's one of those, hey, this is our business. This is what it takes, and a lot technology can augment that or make it easier. But some things have not changed, which is personalized guest experience just has a huge impact on guest satisfaction. So that was one of the first things that really stood out to me.
And how is Relay helping with a more personalized guest experience?
Yeah, we've seen that, especially in luxury hotels. One of the things that they're known for, obviously, is creating a much more personalized guest experience. And there's been lots of pioneering brands that have made that happen. And when we've actually looked at the data of how do luxury hotels communicate differently, they communicate almost 50% more in luxury hotels versus the average. And so Relay's part of that is to create an incredibly high level of guest experience. It requires like a level of communication that is extremely high and frequent. And the way so many hotels are communicating is over different over Relay, of course, but through two-way communication devices, live audio communication to get things done. And so we really see that like what we do in making that better, optimizing it, pulling down the barriers so that people can communicate in the way that works best for their business, impacts that end result of they're able to provide a higher guest experience with less time and less effort and with less games of telephone and all the other things that can get in the way of providing, what everyone is trying to do, which is a better personalized high level guest experience.
I love that. And David, we had somebody on who was asking about how luxury hotels provide this high level of guest experience. And they're like, oh, the bellman outside, he'll radio back, oh, Mr. Carran or Mr. Millili's coming in. And then everybody knows who you are by name. So it just kind of shows how critical your software, your, not even software, but hardware is to, the communication of these hoteliers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of it too is like speed. If you can if someone requests something and you get it to them lickety split, that's going to impress. That's going to create that feeling. But often, what gets in the way of that is not of like a speedy, response to a guest need. Is not like, oh, we don't have enough towels or whatever.
Yeah.
It's, can we communicate it effectively and quickly enough to provide the response that we want?
And so you also discussed in the report safety trends and investments. Did anything coming out of that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were two. Well, there was a lot of things that surprised me. I'll throw out a couple. We can kind of talk about whichever ones you'd like. I think slips and falls was high on the list, and I think for me that surprised me just because I couldn't pinpoint anything that's dramatically changed that over the past, floors aren't more slippery than they were.
Right.
If anything, maybe the only thing that's changed is we're in a more litigious society now than we were, 15 or 20 years ago. So that's one. I think I was also surprised that when we asked, okay, what are you doing to invest in employee safety? And what are you doing to invest in guest safety? They were pretty much exactly the same. Most of pretty much, I think the view that we extracted from the report is that investing in those things is one and the same, which I think is a good thing, because then you don't have to worry about, or we're going to prioritize guest or employee safety. Most of the investments are going to impact both groups positively. And then I think the last thing that kind of surprised me was, we think a lot about, relays have a panic button incorporated in it. We think a lot about the threat of physical violence. But when we actually asked the hoteliers, that was lower on the list. It's obviously there and something that they're worried about, but they were much more worried about slips and falls and severe weather and other things that were not physical violence. So,
one thing that's so interesting about your product, and you talk about it, whether it be guest or employee, do you have, obviously we know we can't say the name of the hotel, but is there any stories you have of kind of real life stories where it's come in and played a part, whether it be for the guest or for the employee?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And we have a bunch of examples on our website that we can share. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I'll tell you a couple of the stories. So one is, I was talking to a GM who, one of his periodic things that he would do was he would check the location dashboard of all his people. And he noticed that someone had kind of been in one room for a long time, longer than they'd expected. And they couldn't get a hold of them. And he went up there and he found an employee passed out. Luckily, everything was okay. But, in this situation, this person lost consciousness before they were able to even signal an alert, or maybe they didn't, just hit them so suddenly they didn't know. But because they were able to kind of see where people were and understand how long they'd been in places, they were able to respond much more quickly. We've had similar situations with heart attacks. Someone's having a heart attack and they've been able to alert their teams and get the help that they need much more quickly. So that's what fuels us. That's what keeps us going. When we, hear one of those stories and it comes in, we share it with the teams. It's that's why we build these products. This is what makes it exciting to work at a company like this. We feel like we are helping keep people safe. So I got more examples that I can send you all later. But those are just a few that I've heard recently.
That's great. So like you mentioned earlier, you're all about helping teams communicate effortlessly. What are some best-in-class communications for, hotels? How can hotels really communicate more effortlessly?
Yeah, so I think I'll throw a couple things that we've seen in the data, and then also just throw a couple things that I've heard frequently as I've interviewed and talked to hotels around the country. So one thing that I think is critical is that you enable your teams to work cross-departmentally. And I'll give you an example of this. So let's say I'm walking down the hall and I see a light bulb is out. And, some organizations in the past, it's okay, if you want to get a hold of maintenance, you're going to call the front desk. And then the front desk is going to call, somebody. And then next thing you know, you have this game of telephone happening. But enabling more situations where a housekeeper could jump to the maintenance channel and say, hey, team, just so you know, I'm on the third floor. I just walked by. It looked like, the light in front of room 302 just went out. And eliminating that game of telephone, getting people more quickly and especially more cross-departmentally is what we see in our best-in-class customers. I mean, we measure, that's one of the things that we measure is how often are you communicating across the channel that you're normally assigned to? And what we see is that in large hotels, you're 4 times more likely to work across departmentally. And then in luxury, you're 3 times more likely compared to hospitality overall. And so I think that's a strong indicator that enabling people to work across departmentally will enable better levels of service. And then also just, for employees, you get more quickly things done and that makes you feel good versus, hey, I called the front desk yesterday and I don't know who got relayed to, and I don't know what happened. That's never fun process to go through.
Yeah, that's great. As an ex-GM, I love that. So we've interviewed a lot of people and, obviously post-COVID, staffing is a big issue across the board, whether it be, how do you retain those employees? How do you incentivize new employees coming in? So how do you feel, how do you believe that, relay communication tools can impact hiring and retention of staff? And also, do you have any examples or any hotels that have kind of, let you know that?
Yeah, I'll share a couple of examples of things I'm excited about. I think the thing that inspired me the most was a team translate example or live translation. Someone was able to get promoted because they could now communicate. They were not able to promote this person because their language skills were not at a level that needed for the job. But once they started using Team Translate, that was no longer an issue, and they were able to promote the person into a management position essentially. And that one like really inspired us because, learning language is tough. And even no matter how hard you're trying, it's like, it's not going to happen overnight. We've also heard similarly along that vein of if you were able to use technology instead of people having, being bilingual, trilingual, whatever you want, that broadens your hiring pool. It gives you more access to more people that maybe you would have, not considered before, which, we've been hearing from our customers has helped with their hiring. So language barriers has been one. I think a couple other areas where we impact is people want to work in a place where they feel valued and they feel safe and they feel empowered. And if you don't give someone the right tool to do the job, they're not going to feel that way. If I tell my 9-year-old to like, go mow the lawn, I give him scissors, like he's not going to be happy, and he's going to be asking about why is this a punishment and how can I never do this again?
Yeah.
And I think that applies not only, obviously for communication, we feel like best in class communication, but really any tool. Do they have the tools to do their job? And then lastly, we find that, there are physical aspects of working in a hotel that are taxing, right? So if I say, hey, I need towels in room 201, and I send someone who's on the 10th floor, it's like, okay, I got to travel all the way down. I got to go all the way back. Or in this part, has stairs. And so what we found is that when we have a good understanding of where people are, through like indoor location tracking, we can say, hey, Joe, I see you're on the 2nd floor, 5 doors down. We just got a request, instead of, sending someone from 10 stories up. And, it was just not really feasible to do that. And you think of like large resorts that are spread out and you've got people all over the place, or even the scenario of, you're looking at the map and you see that, hey, it's check-in time, but I only have one employee in that location. They got to be swamped. So where you're able to proactively, reach out and say, hey, we need to send a couple more people to this location.
Right.
I think all of that helps people, feel valued, feel safe, feel like they're not, there's hard things about jobs, but nobody really likes things that waste time. Right. And that they're like, why did I have to walk all the way across the property? So those are a handful of ways that we've seen that impact, that big challenge that's facing our industry.
I love that. Man, that is really great. It seems like you guys are not only helping with staffing, but also the communication side, and also helping your employees be more efficient as well. So really cool to see what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying. We're trying.
Well, that was great. So we've been asking you questions this whole time. So this is the last section here where we're going to turn the tables and let you ask David and I a question.
Yeah. Well, so, I've got to take advantage that you guys have been looking at the hospitality report. I'll throw a couple questions out. Y'all pick what works best. Okay, what surprised you both the most? And then for next year, because we're going to do it again, what are some areas that you'd like to see us focus on and pull more insights out?
Ooh, what a good question. I just love the safety aspect. I think that's so important. I did work in the panic button area for a little bit in my tech days, but I just think the safety is so important. And kind of like you said, it not only helps them feel more safe, but more comfortable as well. And hotels like that get tax breaks as well for, those different compliance things. So I thought that was great. Focusing on next year, man, I love the communication aspect of it. I really thought it was cool how talking about the translation and how employees can communicate so effortlessly back and forth. So, I'd be interested to hear how much, I guess, time this has saved hoteliers for the communication aspect. And like you said, instead of going 5 or 10 floors down to another room, you can just go 5 doors down, just seeing where the employees are. So those are kind of my 2 things that really, really caught my eye.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, especially, talking to your team at High Tech, for me being an ex-GM, it was and I would like to see more of diving into that communication piece and how many languages and that like the stories and the retention, things of that nature. I know you can only put so much in a report. You don't only put all these different stories, but to me, that's where I would love to see more and more about, as you guys grow, the number of languages, the number of staffing, and things of that nature. Because like I said, as an ex-GM, that was a big issue managing a hotel in New York. We just really struggled because we had so many different languages, and it was like we needed staff, and we were an independent hotel, so we weren't a union hotel. So, we were able to pick and choose who we hired a lot freer than a union hotel, but it was definitely the communication piece and the languages. And so any more deeper dive into that, as the staffing concern is still an issue, and I think it will always be, at least for the next couple of years, that would be key to me.
Yeah, and kind of those numbers, like staffing, we've been hearing about that for like 2 years, right? Like how much does this language translation open up that talent pool? How many more applicants are you able to have just because they now don't have to worry about that barrier of language? So that was the language thing David and I actually talked about multiple times after talking to your team at High Tech. That was one thing that just really blew us away and really impressed us.
Oh, good. Well, no, those are great areas. We were excited. This was our first step, but the plan is every year to make it bigger and better and to dive deeper. And also, if you look at when we launched the language translation, it was only a couple months later we did this report where we're going to have a full year of being able to pull those stories out. Yeah, the language piece is really, for me, like there's been so many kind of empty promises when it comes to language translation, like in technology overall. But, our team was really thoughtful in saying like, no, this is real. This is how it works. And I was with a customer last week that was nearby where our headquarters is. And I talked to a housekeeper that did not speak English, and I interviewed her in Spanish. And she described, because we had implemented the translation, or they turned on the translation like 2 weeks after she started. And she was saying, the first 2 weeks, I didn't feel connected to my team. I didn't feel empowered. I didn't have a relationship with my boss because I could not speak with them. She's like, but now like, it's great, and they were like laughing, and it was clear that like it had just so much impacted, her, how she viewed her job and her ability to like do good work. And that's what we want to do more of. We want to empower people to feel that way. So we will definitely dive deeper into that in the report next year, and really excited to do it.
Well, this has been great. That does it for another episode of the Modern Hotelier. Derek, this is where you get to let people know how they can find out more about Relay, how they can get in touch with you. So plug away.
relaypro.com, or just type in, Relay communication devices or whatever you want to Google. It should pop up. Always welcome people to reach out directly to me on LinkedIn or any other social channel or platform. My email is dpando@relaypro.com if you'd like to reach out. And yeah, please, we love to hear from anyone. And, Steve and David, just thank you so much for having us and asking such insightful questions. And we really enjoyed being on the show.
So that does it for another episode of the Modern Hotelier, the most engaged hospitality podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, we appreciate you and hope to see you again soon. Thank you, Derek. We appreciate it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Relay. Relay is a cloud-based technology platform that helps hospitality teams streamline communications, increase employee safety, and improve productivity and response time, all while enhancing guest experience. It combines two-way communications with language translation and a panic button to help hospitality teams transform their operations. Relay's lightweight, easy-to-use devices leverage multiple cellular networks and Wi-Fi to provide nationwide connectivity and reduce dead spots, track performance and the real-time locations of staff and equipment down to the room without the need for expensive infrastructure upgrades. Can your radio do that? Visit relaypro.com for more information.
You made it to the end of the Modern Hotelier. Thanks for listening. The Modern Hotelier is produced by Make More Media. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you know a guest or sponsor that would be a good fit, feel free to email us at hello@themodernhotelier.com. If you'd like to get some Modern Hotelier merch, click the merch button on modernhotelier.com or click the link below. Thanks and have a great day.